Good evening. I am just sitting on my back porch this evening. I just finished cooking dinner and I want to share some things with you before I share what I make. I'll show you myself making it and all the steps that I went through. But this is not a recipe. This is a method, and it shows you how to make a roux, how to make a gravy. It's completely customizable, how to make a crust. We're making chicken pot pie. And as I always say, there is more than one way to skin a cat. There is a million ways to make a pot pie recipe. And it doesn't have to be chicken pot pie. It could be beef pot pie, a vegetarian version. I love to make a mushroom pot pie. My son Isaac will think that's the most disgusting thing he's ever heard, which I found out he watches my videos this week. Who knew? Anyway, I'm going to show you a quick method of using basic pantry staples to make a tasty, easy pot pie. Completely, again, customizable. Some people like your traditional pie crust. I didn't use pie crust. I had in my freezer some frozen puff pastry sheets, so I've used puff pastry. Some people like to use biscuit dough. Some people like to use canned pop biscuits. Some people use a batter made from like a Bisquick type recipe. It's your house, it's your kitchen, it's your preferences. Make whatever you like. I personally prefer to use fresh chopped up chicken thighs, or I like to use canned chicken that I canned myself. I'm not using either one of those things in this recipe. I'm using canned chicken from the store. Kind of looks like big cans of tuna, but it's chicken breast meat, because I wanted to use things that I had in my pantry. And I had some puff pastry sheets, I had some canned chicken, I made a gravy from a roux, which I'll show you how to make, which is fat and flour, and then you turn it into a gravy with stock and milk. You may prefer to use canned cream of soup. You could use cream of chicken soup, cream of mushroom soup, cream of celery soup. There's a million cream soups out there. Some people don't like to use those. I often have my own homemade version that I can and keep in my pantry. I didn't use either one of those things tonight. I made my own gravy. So I'm going to walk you through how to do this just so you have the basics. And then however you might choose to make your chicken pot pie from there is up to you. I hope you learned some things. Please let me know if you have any questions. Here you see the brand of frozen puff pastry sheets that I use. 2 are in a box. I put some oil in the bottom of a 9-inch deep pie plate, and then I laid one of the frozen puff pastry sheets into the bottom of the pie plate and pricked it with a fork so that when I pre-bake it, it won't puff up so big. I'm only going to partially bake this for 10 minutes. And when it comes out of the oven, you'll see how it has started to rise and started to brown, but it is not done yet. So let's talk about that crust. You can use any brand that you want. That's just what I had on hand. And you can't use it while it's frozen. I did have to thaw it out. So this morning I grabbed it out of my freezer. I knew what I was going to make for dinner tonight. And I threw it in my refrigerator for the day. And then when it was time to use it, it was basically thawed out. It was a little stiff, but because I'm using it as a crust and not as some presentation dessert piece where it needed to be perfect, it was totally fine. It's also square. Pie plates are round. You do not have to use a pie plate. You could throw that into a casserole dish, would be totally fine. You also don't have to have a bottom crust. I like bottom crust on my pot pie, but sometimes I make it without. So if you don't want a bottom crust, save your extra sheet and use it for something else on another day, and you only need one. A couple of other things you might want to consider on the crust is convenience versus value. Pie crusts are one of the easiest things to make. So if you want to make a homemade pie crust, they're very inexpensive, very easy to make. We can make a pie crust another day. They don't cost money because the ingredients that go into a pie crust are pennies when you're making them. But if you want to go for convenience, which I don't always recommend, but today was pretty convenient for me, you can buy pre-made pie crusts that are already in a little tin foil pan that's good to go. You can also buy them in the freezer section that are rolled up, just like these puff pastries were rolled up and frozen. You can buy pie crusts in the same way. They're over in the refrigerated section, I think. So there's a couple of options there as well. You're going to heat your skillet over medium-high heat with oil in the bottom because we're going to be sauteing half of a diced onion. Okay, let's talk skillets, fats, and onions. You can use any skillet you want. It just needs to be big enough that it can hold all of the filling. This is going to do one deep dish pie, so maybe a 10 to 12 inch skillet would be best. I'm using a ceramic coated cast iron skillet because I love it, but you can use whatever you want. The fat that I have in there is olive oil. That's not traditional. Traditionally, it's butter. Butter's fantastic, tastes good in absolutely everything, but I'm out of butter and I prefer olive oil in most things that I cook. You could use lard, you could use bacon grease, which is also delicious. You can use any kind of oil you prefer. I wanted to use this light tasting olive oil because that's what I had on hand and because it's not going to overpower what I am making my filling to be. And as for the onion, use as much, as little, or none that you want. I am softening by sauteing a raw onion. I have a bag of Vidalia onions in there and I'm using half of a small one because that seems to be enough for me to make a pie. But if you don't like onions, leave them out. If you love them and you want extra, go for it. If you have white onions, purple onions, scallions, it does not matter. Use whatever you like. Here you can see the brand of the canned chicken that I'm using, and I'm going to show you a breakout here between the weight of the meat that's in that 15.5-ounce can versus the amount of broth that you get. And then I beefed up that juice from the can with a little bit of chicken base. We are also going to be using a cup of milk to make the broth. Okay, so let's discuss chicken. I have thoughts on chicken, and I want to make things as budget friendly as possible because if I can save on my budget and my grocery items, then I can use that money elsewhere in my budget for my household. Canned chicken, like I just used, is not the most, it's the most convenient. It is the most expensive thing you're gonna get. They pride themselves on, oh, this is convenient, it's quick and easy, pop a can open and dump it in whatever you're making, and that's great, and it worked fantastic for what I'm using it for. But I only buy that if I can find a deal and it is on sale, because I like to have convenience foods like that in my pantry, and I think I have 4 or 6 cans of that in there. But when you can buy whole pounds of fresh chicken in the butcher for around $1 or $2 a pound, that is way more budget friendly and will feed your family multiple times depending on how many you get. So I always keep my eyes open for a sale. This particular can was 15.5 ounces. But when I weighed that out separate from the meat and the liquid that it's cooked in, this particular brand only has chicken, water, and salt. Makes it a little higher sodium. I like to keep things on the lower sodium side when I'm cooking, and then I'll salt it as I see fit for my taste and for my preferences. But it was only about 7.5 ounces of actual chicken breast meat, and then it was about 3/4 of a cup of liquid, which we'll call broth. It's just chicken juice, basically. It's cooked in that can, and it's tasty, but it's very bland. So I used 2 cans of chicken. You didn't see 2 in the photos that I just showed, but there are 2 cans that I used, which gave me just over 2 cups of meat and about 1.5 cups of juice. And then because that juice is so bland, you can use it as it is. I wanted to beef up the flavor, so I added 1 teaspoon of chicken base. If you've never used chicken base before, it's fantastic. You can find it on the spice aisle in a jar. They've got chicken base, beef base, mushroom base, vegetable base, all sorts of them. They're a more concentrated version of a stock, way more flavorful than bouillon cubes, which I also have plenty of in my pantry that I use for all sorts of things. But 1 teaspoon is pretty salty, and I diluted it into that cup and a half of broth that I had, and so it didn't make it too salty, made it have a really punchy chicken flavor, and it's going to be excellent for making this broth. So my seasonings are salt, pepper, onion powder, and a little poultry seasoning. I'm using a can of mixed vegetables, and then we're going to start sauteing our onion in our hot oil. Okay, spices and vegetables. Salt, pepper, pretty standard. I use a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, maybe a teaspoon, a half teaspoon, somewhere in there. I like to use onion powder. It's one that I made myself. It's just dehydrated onions and then grind them up. They make a really punchy onion flavor without being sharp or overpowering. It's just a really good undertone. I could have also used garlic powder, but I didn't really want a garlicky flavor in this pie. It doesn't mean that I don't always not use garlic, but I didn't in this one. And then poultry seasoning I had on hand. I also had a mixed turkey seasoning that I use, sage being the main difference. In my poultry seasoning, I have thyme and rosemary. I think I have a little bit of oregano in that one. But my turkey seasoning, I always have sage in, and I smelled that one. It smelled great if it was Thanksgiving, but I didn't want that overpowering. Sage can sometimes be a little pungent. So I just use plain poultry seasoning. You can find it in the spice rack at your local supermarket. You can make your own, whatever you like. I also considered throwing in a little pinch of cayenne in there. Our family likes things slightly on the spicy side, but I wanted this to be more of a comfort food and not anything fancy. So no cayenne in this one. As for the vegetables, I used 1 can, and mine happened to be low sodium, of mixed vegetables. It was the little diced up potatoes, carrots, peas, and corn. Some people like green beans in theirs also, and some people like mushrooms like myself. I didn't have any mushrooms, and this particular can didn't come with green beans in it, but you can use a can, drain it, and you're going to be adding that to the filling. You can use frozen. They don't have liquid in them, so you just add the frozen bits however much you want, maybe half bag, to the filling when it's time, and they'll cook into the sauce and they'll cook in the oven, so you don't have to do anything to those. You may also have vegetables that you canned yourself on your pantry shelf. If you do, I'm proud of you. In this section, we're going to be making the roux, R-O-U-X. This is the base of our gravy. I have finished sauteing the onion and added the flour. It's cooked down, and then I'm going to add the stock. The stock is just the broth with the chicken base added in, and we're going to stir that together until it's all incorporated nicely, and it's going to start to thicken. A whisk is the best way to keep it from getting lumps in it. And then once we have all of that incorporated and starting to thicken, we'll add the milk. That's all the liquid we need. You'll know you get the right consistency when it coats the back of your spoon. And if you wipe your finger through the spoon, the line holds and does not run back together. I love this part of the video, but I'm gonna have to explain some things because it moves a little fast. And I'm sorry if you hear a lawnmower in the background. My husband's mowing the yard, and I appreciate him doing it, so I don't mind. But we're making a roux. A roux is approximately 50-50 fat and flour. So I used about 4 tablespoons of olive oil. So I used 4 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. The onions had been sauteing in the oil. When they got soft enough and they were good enough for me, I just dumped in the flour all at once, stirred it together with my wooden spoon. You need to cook the flour a little bit. You can make a roux as dark as you want. I just needed this one to be a light golden brown that cooks the raw flour taste out, and it will incorporate it. You'll see that the flour will literally start to kind of melt into that oil. Once it got to that point, I already had the broth measured out from the cans of chicken I had used, and I had already dissolved the 1 teaspoon of chicken base bouillon flavoring that I had put in there. So I dumped that whole thing in slowly and stirred as I went. It's going to clump. It's fine. Just let it just kind of melt into there. Keep stirring. I grabbed a whisk, just kind of whisk the little chunks out. Still gonna have chunks in it because the onions are in there. It's fine. It'll start to thicken, and you'll think, oh, maybe I need some more liquid. And you do. That's when you add the 1 cup of milk. You could also use a cup of water. You could use another cup of broth. I wanted it a creamy texture like you see in a traditional chicken pot pie, so I added milk. You could also use plant-based milk. I often have oat milk or almond milk in my refrigerator. This was regular, I think it was 2%, just dairy milk, so whatever you have will be fine. Once that's in there, let it simmer a little bit and it will start to thicken. That's when you want to turn your heat off, because that cast iron skillet that I use holds heat for a long time. So I just turn the heat off or turn it all the way down to low so that it doesn't scorch or burn. Just stir it together, and then I'm gonna add the seasonings in. That makes your gravy. You know you've got the right consistency because you'll stir it with your spoon. You'll turn the spoon over and that gravy stays on the spoon. It's become thick, or nappe is the word that we use oftentimes in the culinary world. You can wipe your finger through it and it doesn't run back together and drip off your spoon in a quick fashion. It holds the line. That's when you know your gravy is done. So here is the end of the gravy production, adding the spices, letting it simmer, and then we move on to adding the rest. We're gonna dump in the 2 cans of chicken, incorporate that well, and then you're going to add the 1 can of vegetables or whatever you choose to add. And here's a look at our traditional filling. So basically we have partially baked a lower crust. We have built the filling, and all that's left to do is pour that filling into that partially baked crust, top it with a vented top crust. I'll show you that in the next set of pictures. And then you're gonna bake it off. After it bakes, you're gonna let it cool for 10 or 15 minutes. And then when you serve it, don't expect to be able to cut it like a pie and serve these thick little slices of chicken pot pie, because that is not chicken pot pie. This is going to just scoop right out of the pan like you would a cobbler or a casserole. You're just gonna take a big spoon, take a dollop out of it and put it on your plate. I made a side salad to go along with it, just some tomatoes, some basil from my garden, some lettuce, and a little balsamic glaze that I drizzled on there. So I hope you enjoy your dinner, or give this a try and make it your own, and maybe write down what you do. That way, if you don't love it, you want to tweak some things, or you really enjoy it and you want to remember how you did it, write it down. Keep your own family's recipes. Here is pouring the entire skillet of filling into that partially baked pie crust. And then I top it with the set aside crust that we had, that I had cut some slits in so that the hot filling can vent through while it's cooking. You'll notice it's square and the plate is round. I just cut those edges off and folded them in. They're pretty after they cook and they puff up. I set the timer for 35 minutes in a preheated 400-degree oven. And when it came out, it was still slightly blonde on the top. It had not cooked all the way. So I put it right back in the oven for another 10 minutes, which equaled 45 minutes total cooking time. And when it came out, it was a beautiful pie. Smelled great. We put it with our side salad that we made and made for a great dinner tonight. Healthy, hit all the food groups. Everyone loved it. This particular plate was for my daughter and she wanted to give her opinion.
I love it.
She's so silly. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know it's probably the longest one I've ever made, but I hope that some of the information in this video might help you in your kitchen with the other recipes that you may be working on. Or if you're a new cook, good luck to you. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm always willing to help. Have a good night.